All right. Hey guys. So, welcome to yet another episode of the Two Time Zones podcast. We've got another guest here with us today, and as you all have noticed, we brought on a mix of personal and professional guests, people we've known through school, through our universities, through our work, and we try to bring you a mix of interesting stories that show Pakistan, that show the world, that show what people are doing. So, today we have a very personal guest. We have Safi Mansour, someone who I've known for close to 20 years. Um, Safi, I don't know if you know this, but you were actually like the first friend I ever made, probably. This was back in Montessori. This was my first day of school. I walk into class and the teacher's like, "Oh, hi kids, this is Salman. He's new. Would anyone like to be his friend?" And then Safi, you were the only person who raised your hand, and that was the start of this multi-decade
Hell
long
yeah.
friendship.
Yeah, I still remember when it was like the most kiddish way of asking anyone to be a friend. I was walked up to Salman and I was like, "Can I be your best friend?" And Salman was like, "Yes." And I'm like, "So we're best friends."
Oh my
this was
god.
this
You
was
guys, you
it
guys
was
jumped straight into the whole best friend scene. You guys like jumped right in. None of that whole friendship, normal friendship, getting to know each other.
it,
He
it
just
was
straight up asked you,
M1. You
man.
could jump into
No, it was
anything. I
M2.
think
I never went to M1. Yeah,
M2.
I skipped
Oh,
Montessori one. I walked into school and someone was like, I think it was a principal or a teacher was like, to my mom, they were like, your child looks too smart to be an M1. He should be an M2. So they just looked at me and they're like, you know what? He's gonna skip a whole year of schooling.
I think they were wrong though, but it's fine.
I think so too. I've been the youngest person in every class since.
But I disagree.
Like
I disagree. I think Salman's really smart. There's a reason why this guy went to Purdue, and he's done engineering in one of the best schools on the planet, from one of the best schools on the planet. So yeah, Ma'am Nazneen was right to an extent.
Yeah,
Ma'am Nazneen knew
thank
what
you,
she
Safi.
yeah,
knew what she was talking about. So yeah, you are really smart.
yeah. That
The only
definitely.
weakness you
I
have is
was
that you're
just
lazy
putting
as
it there.
fuck.
Yeah.
The only weaknesses that you have is that you're lazy as fuck,
My
and you're
God.
like a diesel truck. You describe yourself like a fucking diesel truck. It's like you need a lot of push to get started, but
Yeah,
then you
that's
have a lot
fair.
of inertia and
No,
momentum to carry you through.
no. The diesel truck isn't about me being lazy. It's about me taking my time with things. Two very different
Dude,
things.
it's called fucking being lazy.
Yeah, I don't think you're that. I think you think you're lazy.
Thank you,
I
Safi.
don't think so.
And now back to our guest. I've told you how I know him, but how the world should know him is as not just a genius, but an artistic genius. Safi has been great at art since the day I met him. He's gone from always like getting A's in art to now being an architecture student who like seems to be having a really good time with that. And on top of that, one of the interesting things that we'll get to later in the story is that Safi's traveled through the most rural parts of Pakistan. He's traveled through some of the most interesting parts of the world, and I think compared to other travelers, he's definitely got a very unique travel portfolio, if that's
Yeah,
a
it is.
word.
It is now. It is now.
So
Is it?
okay,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, we're definitely gonna hear a lot
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that later. So Safi, is there anything you'd like to add to that about yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I think that I can add to myself because that was, I think, a very good and very flattering description. More to say. But
You're welcome.
uh, but I think that there is a lot of fun, definitely, and there's a lot of suffering involved as well. The architecture
Yeah.
school
Tell,
is
t-
equal
tell
parts
us one
suffering.
of your interesting stories. Tell us one of your interesting suffering stories from architecture school, like because I'm also an architecture student. I'm with you. I am. I know how things go around in my end, but like I've heard some of your stories. But like, tell us, man, in the world, what the sufferings of your school are, and yeah, we shall get into that.
So I don't. So the stuff that happens, the main stuff that's actually funny, and everything happens in a very uh, in a context. So it's kind of hard to describe the fun parts, but there's just the major suffering parts where you have suddenly like 7 essays in 3 weeks. So to do that, right now we have a lot of work, and a lot of times you have to make up a lot of bullshit right on the spot. So I think I've
Yeah.
become the king of
Yeah.
going through that now because I invent stories about my project maybe 2 hours before that begins, and then those end up being.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of good lying, I think. Good lying.
I
Sometimes.
I I
Sometimes
I
I don't
feel
lie
like I
all
feel
the
like
time.
that's I feel like that's I feel like that's every third or fourth year architecture student, but at this point, because they've literally had to make up something on the spot, or literally, have a reason for why they put something there and all that. Just like come up with some bullshit story that backs up their fucking concept or their model or whatever the fuck they're trying to make, man. At the end of the day, man. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive here, and there's a lot more lying in the real world, as far as I know. So yeah, you're just training yourself for the real world, man. Kudos to you.
Well, I mean, Safi, I find that really surprising that you say it's a lot of good lying because you're pretty terrible at lying, and as me and Saw, then everyone who knows you know you're absolutely terrible at sarcasm, and I don't think you've ever gotten
No, look,
sarcasm
I think
ever
I
in
am
your
very
life.
good at sarcasm because uh, I think I don't get it.
This guy is this this
Look,
guy is the this guy is the Sheldon Cooper of our group. Like when it comes
look,
to understanding
I
sarcasm,
don't
he's like just like
understand it.
Sheldon
I don't
Cooper, guys.
understand it,
There's
but when I do it, I think I do a pretty good job
Okay,
at it.
that's
But I
true.
don't understand other people.
Because we all know Safi's terrible at sarcasm. If he's ever sarcastic, none of us will notice.
Yeah, yeah. You see that? That's exactly what I
Exactly,
mean. That's
exactly.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Put.
No, Safi, that's not how it fucking works. That's just not how it fucking works. When you're sarcastic, I think, when you're sarcastic, I think the point is to make the other person know that you're just like saying it like that.
No,
It's not just to, like make it
Safi's an
come off as if
artist.
you actually believe in that thing.
I actually
Yeah,
want to
man.
say something about that. I am horrible at art and aesthetics. I'll just give you that much. I have zero aesthetic because I'll tell you, for the longest time, until about 8th grade, I felt like I was a Michelangelo. I was like, oh wow, I am the greatest at this art thing, right? And then 4 years, I was so useless at it that I did not know how to draw a glass of water when I was about to give the admission test for this university. And I still cannot draw a glass of water properly, let me tell you
Yeah.
that. So I'm not really an
I
artist,
feel like
but
the biggest misconception when it comes to architecture is that there's a lot more to do with drawing, but there's hardly anything to do with actually drawing or sketching on paper. There's maybe like the beginning parts, maybe the initial stages where you have to sketch out ideas and all that, and that's with every other field, engineering and all those other fields. It's the same, but like there's hardly any drawing or actual artistic skill required in architecture. It's literally you come up with a concept, you take it to AutoCAD, you build it up, you iterate it, and then you just make a 3D model out of it. That is just like the basic crux of what architecture is. There's hardly any actual physical line drawing and all that, unless you actually want to do it and you want to show off your skill. That's separate. That's a separate criteria altogether. But what I'm talking about is the bare fucking minimum, and you do not need to be an artist to be an architect. And that is the biggest misconception all across Pakistan. And literally every kid in first year, when you ask them, oh, why are you doing architecture? Oh, it's the perfect blend between science and art. I've always wanted to do it. Literally 80
yes,
to 90%
this
of
is
fucking kids, they don't even
everyone's
know why the
answer.
fuck they want to come into architecture. They just copy this this
Everyone.
literal phrase.
Yeah, that's that's
It's
everyone.
fucking annoying.
That's absolutely everyone. I don't think
It's
there's
fucking
one
annoying.
person. Yeah, either they assume that it's going to be a, either they assume कि मुझे घर
Yeah.
बनाने का बहुत शौक है. I love making homes, or they assume that, or they're like, oh, it's just right there. We couldn't do science and we couldn't do art, so we
Yeah.
were like both. So
Yeah.
I think
Play
I
on your
was I was I
weaknesses.
was the latter one, because I had. Yeah, because I was coming from computer science,
Oh,
6
yeah.
months of computer science, and I was also, and I was like, okay, this is very sciencey, and I know I can do it, but it's
Yeah.
not creative enough. So then I went in my interview and I was like, this is the perfect blend between
In my
science
opinion, in my
and
opinion, if you
arts,
if you
and
if you really
I
want to,
think it worked.
in
I
my
think we
opinion, if you
were
really want
amongst
to, you can
excellent.
really make computer science really, really creative. Like if you just like start coding on your own. Like I don't know much about it. I'm just going off the top of my head here, but like you can create some really interesting coded stuff. Like I'm just assuming you can because we're just not taught creativity in our institutions. We're just taught to follow the general rules. If then what if all those fucking I don't know. I'm just talking about basic O-level codes, but like they're just all. I'm pretty sure if you were to experiment outside that, you can create some insane visuals or insane, cool animations and all that just through code.
You're more than right. Actually,
Yeah.
there's a lot of room over there. But of course, at that
Yeah.
time, I did not think that that was the case. Also, then this was a good alternative. I think it's fit very well because uh, I think now it's more so about the ideas that come with architecture itself more than the what's actually built that I like to play with and like to work with. So I think that in the end, we're also taught so much about what it should be, and
Oh yeah.
it's very
Oh yeah.
utopian a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of
It's more
times, the
concept art than
architecture.
actual
So I
fucking,
think,
implementation, because
yeah,
that's where civil engineers and contractors come in and they just
yeah. So
butcher
a
your
lot of
design, rip
things,
it
if
apart,
they
and
actually
just,
go to
make it
get
something
built,
that it
they
wasn't
never
meant to be.
really get built at all. So architecture is very idealistic as well, I must say, and I think I'm an idealistic person in some ways. So I guess that works.
So, since we're criticizing architecture, Safi, you've always been a very critical person. You're great at picking out things that are terrible in the world. So, a question that I had that I thought I'd like to hear is what's a popular building that you think is completely overrated?
That's the issue. Most popular buildings are heavily overrated because now I don't want to delve into the full thing here, but essentially, use. I'll just talk about Pakistan because I think that people will know the buildings abroad and their issues. So there are a lot of issues with the new kind of buildings that are coming up here, especially skyscrapers. I just want to talk about Karachi because we talked a lot about that. There's this icon tower of Karachi, which is a very, very famous building, still being built. And it's like, I don't know, it's like a trillion stories high. Okay, for me, a person living in Islamabad, that building feels like it's taller than the Himalayas, but it's very tall. So that's not the criticism, though. It's just like you have 40 degrees summer, and that building is covered in glass, and you're gonna burn everyone inside unless you have ACs going 24/7. This is a very boring, drawn out discussion, but eventually, you should know that 2 floors of that building to the basements, because there are 9 basements, 2 floors are underwater right now because did
The
not
name is
plan those out
the name is
properly.
fitting,
It's
Icon Tower.
very iconic, but yeah, it's and they almost destroyed a Hindu temple and a
Icon Tower.
mazar with that building as well. So there were lots of issues going on. I think most popular buildings have these sort of issues where there's a lot of capital
Yeah.
accumulation behind them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yo,
Have I
Saman, what are we
gone?
hitting on
Have I
next?
gone too far?
What are we hitting on
No, that
next?
was a perfect answer. Yeah, so I think this leads well into talking about. So we've talked about how we have some pretty terrible buildings coming up in Pakistan, and a lot of the architecture can be not well thought out. But on the other hand, I'd say one of my favorite things about Pakistan and Islamabad, especially since that's where I grew up, is how almost every single building is different. They're not good. A lot of them are amazing, a lot of them are terrible, but every single building is different because most people have bought the buildings, the houses, torn them down, and built their own houses there to express themselves, to add more bedrooms, so they can sell the house for more money, things like that. And I think it's just really nice to be able to drive through houses, to drive past houses and see so many different designs.
I feel
Sorry.
like it's all good. It's all good. I feel like that description that you're describing of Islamabadi houses looking very different. I feel like that is only true for F6, F7, F8 for the houses where people have torn down and built new houses. But if you go to any of the G sectors, they all look the fucking same because they've been like mass produced by I think the same people
So
and all
they
that.
were mass
So it all depends on
produced,
which area you're talking about. But
I
Islamabad does
think
have a
that
but
there's
yeah.
yeah, okay. I think there's definitely what's the other thing. I really agree with that. I won't go into details of what's wrong with the farm-based contractor development occurring, but let's go into the G sectors, which is a very sad case actually because there's a clear inequality and divide you can see between the F part and the G's part, right? And which is you can see even the quality of apartment buildings in F sectors is a whole lot better, and they look different. There's kind of variety, quality as well. I think present there. But in the G sectors, I live in G10, and we have a lot of government housing there, which honestly is not in very good condition. So I think I agree. There's good variety sometimes, but obviously the basis for that variety is debatable. Um,
on that note, I do think I agree that these mass-produced houses they take away from it, but given how old Islamabad is and how old the G sectors are, and I mean we're a relatively new city, but these houses are old enough that when you with as a compared to your mass-produced houses, most of those, or at least a significant amount, have been rebuilt by new owners over time. So even I live in G9, and I know there is a standard house scheme that I've seen. Um, I once walked into a house, and my dad was like, "Oh, so and so person's house was exactly like this." But most of the houses on my street, for example, are completely unique, and there's a lot of heart and soul in them, and everyone has a certain reason for why they made a house a certain way. And even if you
Let's
disagree, it's
talk.
beautiful to see so much meaning
Let's
in these
talk about
houses.
let's talk about your specific street because I find your specific street really interesting. The entirety of the Karachi company area, let's be honest, is a shitbox. ठीक है मतलब it's just like it's just degrading over time. People the people that live there they don't really know how to take care of the area that they're living in. But when you enter your specific street, I think it's because of your community and the fact that you guys band together and you guys do a lot of humanitarian efforts and all that. Since it's a closed community, you guys can do a lot of more things that people generally would not do. And since you all live in the same street, that mindset transcends into your spaces as well, which is your houses. And which is why I said, Salman, when I first entered your house is one of the most beautifully planned houses I've ever been to in my entire life, given the space that you're living in. Matlab, it's not really like a lot of land, but you guys have used it effectively. I like the way your spaces work out and everything, and it's one
I
of the most
can't
unique
even
houses
I
I've
don't
ever
even
been
know
to.
how long it was, but it felt like at least half a decade that my parents spent just trying to figure out how to build this house. Because they're like, oh, let's have this. Oh no, I don't know if that's a good idea. And they really thought about it, and I love the result though. But on a side note,
Safi,
thank you,
you agree, right?
Safi.
You agree, right?
your
It has
house
a
is
very
really
modernistic
brilliant.
touch.
Yeah,
It has a very modern touch, but it's also very rustic as well,
yeah.
considered given the materiality. And these guys, have you seen? These guys use the Japanese furniture concept. Very low lying furniture makes the ceiling heights look a lot higher. So if you go into Salman's living room, his furniture is really close to the ground. His sofas, his TVs, his speakers, and everything, it's really low to the ground. And when you sit down, you're even laid back. So the ceiling heights look a lot taller than they actually are.
So that
So
actually,
that is
I don't think that was intentional. I think we bought one piece of low-lying furniture, and then the next time we had to replace something, we just happened to find reclining chairs that were about the same height, the same general design and
Hmm.
style, and I guess we
Hmm.
accidentally bought one part of this low-lying furniture culture, and then the next thing we knew, we had to buy everything else, just to make sure our new
Here's the thing,
pieces fit
Salman.
in.
Here's the thing, Salman.
So it's really interesting how that works.
A lot of design is very subconscious. It's not really a conscious decision. You think things look nice. Designers know why they look nice, but we all feel that they look nice. ठीक है? Just because you might not know exactly why a space looks nice doesn't mean that you can't design a really nice space. I think that's a really big misconception that people need to get over, is that you don't always need to hire a designer to design your spaces and all that. I feel like if you have a good aesthetic sense, you can really knock something out of the park when you know what you're doing.
Yep, that's solid. And on that note, let's move on to the next and the last topic we have today, which is traveling. Safi, you've traveled through Pakistan, and I've heard crazy stories from you. Stories that you just casually walk in, and I'm like, oh, what'd you do last week? It was like, oh, I met a random group of people. We got
Yeah.
on a bus. We drove 307 hours to the top of this mountain,
Truth.
and we camped
Truth.
out and stuff. And you just say it so casually, but those are amazing experiences that most people in Pakistan don't experience, even though we're right there. So tell us more
Yeah,
about that.
I was actually a very lucky person. It was actually exactly 2 years, 2 years ago, because no, was it 1 year ago? It was 1 year ago. Yeah. So we had planned like an Eid kind of day to Naran, Kagan, this area with the family, and so like I was busy planning it out. I'd seen some areas, and then it got kind of cancelled. So I was quite upset about that, and I was like, you know what, I am going to a green place because I need to see like nice pine tree there, and I need to see like cedars, right? And so I went in this random travel group. I don't even know who they are. They were the only ones who were taking people on it the third day, I think it was. And I don't know why, it just felt like a really easy step to take at the time. Um, to randomly go in a bus because I was desperate, like very, very desperate to go out and see see that nature before work began. And I tell you, I sat in that bus. They were all from Lahore, so I was the only one from Islamabad in that bus. And they stopped for me some random place on the highway at around 3 a.m. And I got in that bus. Everyone is dead asleep. And that's when it began to hit me that I'm in a bus with like 20 other random people. I'm also the youngest among all of them, by the way. The other ones, they were like 24, was some youngest ones. I was 20 at the 21. I keep losing track of my age. I was 20 at the time, I think. And so that is when it began to hit me. And there was still about 13 hours left for our next stop. So yeah, it was a lot of headphones and pretending to look at phones sometimes, and also mainly the view outside was really great. And it taught me to learn to talk to all those people who were sitting
In my opinion, Safi, I
around,
think you
and
learned a
that's where
lot
it
more than you
began.
actually, think you learned, because like during that trip, I think you learned how to talk to people. You learned how to, generally communicate with random ass people. You learned how to, generally fight your fears essentially, and go and travel. A lot of people are scared to travel. Because because of many reasons, but and like I think you just overcame all that because your desperation. But like you went through, and you had one of your greatest memories to date. Yeah.
I think I think it's that part where it actually came to
Yeah,
talking about people happened the year before that when I went with my friend to Turkey. That was a big experience that helped that as well. And also, it was, of course, mind-blowing experience for me to be going with a friend and doing all of that stuff. But I think I'm
Of course.
more actually excited and by internal travel within this country. I think I have never been more inspired than I have uh, going to where I have in last summer. It was a very inspiring experience. I mean, there are a lot of details I can share about it. Maybe Salman wants to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
something
yeah.
before
So I mean, I guess a good way to go
Yeah.
about that is, so the more popular places to visit in Pakistan and in the hills especially are Naran Kagan, Natyagali, Mari Burban, Skardu, Chitral. Um, what are some of the more, and these are all beautiful places that most of our nation hasn't seen, but what are some of the more unknown places? Yeah. So why don't you end with your favorite place,
Your
Safi?
favorite place. Your favorite place so far, Safi.
Oh, definitely the Kumrat Valley. Upper Deer is the most beautiful
Comrade
place on
Valley,
earth.
Upper
Yeah,
Deer.
yeah, yeah.
Hell yeah.
I
And
think,
on that bombshell, guys,
yeah.
we've had a great podcast with the legend Safi Mansoor. Watch his name, watch his space. You guys will see this guy emerging as one of the Pakistan's greatest architects to ever, grace the country, grace the
Greatest
platform,
name.
and maybe, and yeah, and just change a few lives. So guys, I think that's it. Peace, adios, goodbye.
Thanks, guys.